She'll let everybody go. Good evening, everybody. We are just working on letting everybody in, so bear with us a few moments while we open the doors. Thank you, everyone, for giving up your Monday night to join us, or wherever you are in the world. So we'll just give it a few secs while people start rolling in. Still a few more coming up. See, we're recording this, so anyone who needs to duck away or pop out, please don't be afraid to do so. So pleased we have so many of you joining us tonight. Thank you, everyone. So just give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Oh, count still going up. Everyone wants to hear your stories, guys. No pressure.
No, yeah, definitely. No, I believe that we do have quite a few interesting stories to
things
tell.
to talk about. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh God, no, we're still going. People still coming in the door, so I'll just give it another minute. Sorry. Thanks everyone who has already joined us. We're just letting everybody else in. We have had a really great number of people want to join us. So thank you all for giving up your time to listen to me chat again on a Monday evening. All righty, we'll probably get started. No, still ticking over. All right, guys, I don't want to keep you all forever, so we will look at getting started. So, as I said, good evening all. Thank you so much once again for joining us for another Vet Times webinar, and of course a cheeky hour of CPD. So just a couple of housekeeping bits. Obviously we're live recording this, so if anyone's not been able to make it, or you have to leave, or you have to pop out, please don't worry, because you'll be able to watch all of this tomorrow. So as always, I've got my lovely Melissa behind the scenes, who is going to be keeping an eye on everything for us, and kind of chat messages. We will aim to kind of go through questions towards the end after we've had a chat, but we'll keep an eye on things, and please feel free to do the raise your hand function, or pop something straight in the chat, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Emma. I'm an RVN, and I'm also head of veterinary support here at Vet Times. And this evening we are, as you know, focusing on all things international. So I will start with a disclaimer, obviously, that while I will always advocate and promote roles for fantastic colleagues and practices in the UK, there may be lots of you out there who are looking for a change. Perhaps you're at a stage in your career where you want to move away, you want to explore some new cultures, experience a different caseload, and work with some different species. So I've been very lucky in my career to work in different parts of the world, including 4 countries in Africa, and hands down, they were some of the most incredible parts of my clinical journey, all of which have led me to where I am now. So I will always advocate for anyone who wants to try something new, and maybe step out of your comfort zone a little bit. So before we get into our chat and introduce our fantastic guests, it's worth noting that we are genuinely a truly international crowd this evening. And as far as I know, we are spanning 3 different time zones, 3 different continents, and 4 different countries as we speak. So for those of you who don't know, I live down in southern Portugal, so I'm actually on the same time zone as the UK. Dr. Alessandro is in Doha, where it's currently about 11 p.m. at night. And Angie is actually in New South Wales in Australia, where it's actually 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So Angie, if there's anything that we need to look out for that's happened, tomorrow, please let us know. Anything we need to be aware of that's kicked off overnight. And I've had some messages from people in Hong Kong today. So we are genuinely from all over the place. So thank you so much, everyone. So let's dive in. I'm going to introduce you to my fabulous speakers this evening. So Alessandro is a veterinary surgeon who graduated in Brazil and holds a postgraduate diploma in small animal internal medicine. He also earned a master's degree in anesthesiology and has extensive experience in small animal clinical medicine, anesthesia, and diagnostic imaging. He's also lectured in pharmacology, anesthesia, and veterinary therapeutics at various universities in Brazil. And has been working at Parkview Pet Centre in Doha in Qatar since 2021. So thank you so much, Alessandro, for being here. And the lovely Angela Goldman. So Angie's lifelong passion for animal care led her to pursue a degree in veterinary science. And after graduating, Angie transitioned into veterinary recruitment, starting with a specialist agency before joining Green Cross, where she quickly progressed to head of talent. Angie is deeply committed to creating a positive and personalised candidate experience. And lucky for us, her favourite part of her role is international recruitment, connecting vets from all over the world with opportunities that align their clinical interests, career goals and aspirations. So thank you so much, Angie, for joining us, especially so early in the morning for you. I know you kindly gave up your gym session, but you've got yourself a coffee, and hopefully it'll be worth it. So I'm going to just kind of kick off and get into some of the burning questions that I kind of feel that people are kind of dying to ask you guys, and obviously getting a really good insight into what life is like outside of the UK and what's available. So Angie, I'm going to come to you first. If you could just kind of paint us a picture to start with, sort of what does day-to-day look like for a vet or an RVN in a Green Cross clinic?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of similarities, obviously. We're an English-speaking country. We've got the same drugs under, in a lot of cases, the same brand names. There are some weird things, though. So particularly where I am, I'm actually in Brisbane. So it's 6 a.m. here. We don't have daylight savings.
Even earlier. Sorry, Angie.
Here we've got things like heartworm. We've already started our paralysis tick season. There's been snake bites coming into our emergency hospitals already, and it's still spring, so we're only just coming into summer. So there's those weird and wonderful things. But beyond that, the day-to-day is pretty similar to what you have in the UK. Our vets typically choose to do 4 longer days, so an 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift to get their 38-hour work week. They've got the set rostered day off each week, might be 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 Saturday mornings only. And I think what people really like about Green Cross is the clinical freedom. So we don't have a set yes, we're a corporate, but we don't have a set Green Cross way of doing things. So we trust our vets to offer that best practice care. We give them longer consult time, so we've got a standard 20-minute consult time. If we know we've got an unwell animal, we've got a 30-minute consult, and we try and have really good nursing support for our vets, and we try and have a really interesting role for our nurses. So doing things like dentals, really using those high-end nursing skills that people, particularly coming from the UK, that you're trained to do and that you're used to doing. So a lot of similarities, really.
Yeah. And I guess for you guys as well in Australia, it's probably different perhaps between a practice in the city, perhaps a practice in sort of out in the middle of, much more rural, and I suppose a GP or ECC clinic as well. So super varied, depending just where you are in the country as well.
And most of our GP clinics won't do after hours anymore. But if I think of one of our regional clinics in particular, we've got one in South Tamworth, and they're a regional referral centre. So yes, it's a GP practice, but they're doing spinal surgeries. They're doing all sorts of really interesting things, particularly on the surgical side, and they do accept after hours at that site, so you can have a bit of everything, and really experience that regional lifestyle as well. It's a lot cheaper out there versus Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne as well.
Definitely. Yeah, we've
Mhm.
got some questions on that a little bit later. Definitely. Thanks so much, Angie. And Alessandra, I'm gonna come to you next. Obviously from
Okay.
Brazil. Why Qatar? What was the hardest sort of decision leaving Brazil? Why did you choose? How did you end up there? Tell us.
Uh, just like those kind of funny coincidences that we have in our lives. Around what I came here 2021, but in 2019, a friend of mine had already he moved here first, and he was working with horses at the time. And before we worked together at the same university. He was the principal. He was the director of the equine hospital. And then he said, look, there is someone here who's going to take some vacation, and we need someone to anesthetize the horses in here. And then, would you like to come? Oh, of course. Yeah. Yes. It's going to be at the same time that I'll be on my vacation. So and then I came the first 20 to 30 days. And then when we had the pandemic, it was not the same. Teaching at the university was not the same because everything went back to the online courses, and all the disciplines, all the subjects, they were kind of online. And then it started to fade away a little bit of that
Yeah.
magic thing that I've always liked at the university, because I've always seen myself at the university with other professionals, exchanging experiences, learning
Yeah.
from them, and trying to teach the students. So this is one of the things that really fires me up. So the main reason why I end up here, it really came through my professional network. These friends
Yeah.
of mine, I had these colleagues who already made the move, and they kind of sort opened the door for me. And
Yeah.
it wasn't something that I was looking for. Also, because many people from the other side of the ocean, we mainly do not know much about here the Middle East
Mhm.
some some other countries.
Yep.
So then he said, "Man, would you like to take a look at it? Would you like to consider? There is an available position." And his wife was working at Parkview at that time, so it's the same place that I'm working now. And the fun thing is, I met both of them in his birthday party, where they met each other. They married like 3 years later,
Oh,
and nowadays they are the godfather and godmother of my daughter. So basically, it was
wow.
through
God,
through
yeah.
network.
Oh, that's incredible. And I guess, yeah, it's interesting how these kind of little connections that you make over the years, how it suddenly just, things work out how they're supposed to, I guess. And kind of while
Mhm.
you touched on there, kind of, people are a bit unsure about the Middle East, and obviously it's, across the world, the global news, it kind of gets various different kind of stigmas surrounding it, I think.
Definitely.
But what's the one thing kind of that Doha gave you that made you think, do you know what? I can be here. I can build a life here.
Uh, when we compare Doha to many other places that I've been to, one of the standout things, it's it how incredibly safe it is here, and how incredibly everything is well organized in here. So you can walk around and you realize that it's a place where you don't have to constantly look over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And I remember the first week that I was here, and I've been to the bank to try to open a bank account. And then I saw a lady going out of the bank. She was counting 500 bills, 500 Qatari reals bills in the middle of the street, walking alone, nobody around her. And I was like desperate, man, please hide your money. And because because to me it's unthinkable for you to leave the
Mhm.
the bank with that pile of money
What
just
if, yeah,
counting.
no.
Dun, dun, dun. Later on I realized that nowadays I know that but why would she be worried about it? Because here it's extremely safe. And this is one of the things that It's quite an interesting place to be. And
Yeah.
all the other things. It's a very beautiful city. The people, they are very welcoming in here. So these are the things that make me get in love with the Qatari people.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And Angie, kind of similar question to you, I guess. Sort of what kind of might surprise newcomers most about life in Australia? What's the kind of the work culture and things like that? What is their biggest sort of kind of assumption, I suppose, if you had to do any kind of myth busting? But yeah, what would surprise people the most?
I don't feel like there's that many surprises here, to be perfectly honest. I think the biggest surprise is probably just how vast
Yeah.
Australia is.
Yeah.
There's something for everyone. We've got the tropics up in far north Queensland, subtropics where I am, more temperate down in Melbourne, and wherever you go, there's just this really big outdoor lifestyle. That's why I love it. I've got two boys, and each weekend we're just outside because we
Amazing.
can be. I think from a veterinary work perspective as well, what comes with that is a different type of medicine depending on where you are in that
Yeah.
country or in the
Hmm.
country, because there's very different things that we see up in far north Queensland versus Melbourne. It's probably a
Okay.
bit more exciting, where it's
Yeah.
more tropical. There's a lot more interesting things, but there's a lot more going on culturally and
Yeah.
socially in cities like Melbourne versus
Yeah.
some of those more regional areas. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think just the size and the difference between those places, it's all the same country,
Yeah.
but it's
They're
a very
just so
different
vast. You've
climate and
just
it's a
got,
different
yeah.
caseload. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So
And
there's a lot on offer.
that's it, exactly. And I suppose as well for internationally trained vets, so vets that have trained or nurses who have trained outside of Australia, what are kind of the main routes to registration? And I'll kind of go to both of you for this in the Middle East and in Australia, kind of the licensing, the process, kind
Yeah.
of what I know, Angie, you guys do a lot of
Mhm.
support around those that are relocating, kind of yeah, Angie, if you want to start with that and just kind of give us some
Yeah,
some insight on
absolutely.
how we do that.
So anyone that's got a UK qualification, it is super simple to register over here. Anyone who's studied in the UK, vet nursing or a vet degree, it's very simple. We would just need, for a vet, you'd need a letter of good standing from the RCVS, proof of your qualification, and then it's a straightforward process. If we're talking about European trained vets, so anyone from outside of the UK, there is an examination process that you need to go through, but we can support people through that. So we're really keen to get more European vets that are willing to do the exam over, but it's not an easy exam. So I'm not going to lie about that. But we are very open to supporting people through that. It's a two-part exam. It's called the Australasian Veterinary Exam. And after the first one, which is a multiple choice, you are eligible for what they call limited registration in many of the states of Australia. And we welcome people on that limited registration now, particularly
Mm,
if they do hold that European-based degree that's recognised in the UK. A little bit
yeah.
trickier if we're talking about other countries. For nurses, similar thing, really straightforward. You don't have to register as a vet nurse in all of Australia. In WA, it's a requirement. In Western Australia, but the rest of the country, it's not.
Okay.
Typically, with that UK bachelor's degree, we do classify you as a different level nurse and pay accordingly. So here in
Okay.
Australia, we've got what they call a certificate for, and the
Mhm.
quality of that is pretty variable depending on
Yeah.
where you've done that certificate. But we
Yeah.
know that any of those UK nurses with the bachelor's degree are going to be at this level in terms of their
Wow.
nursing and their skills.
Mm.
So the registration for anyone like that, pretty straightforward. Visas we can help with. We've got a dedicated migration agent that does all of our visas. We're open to people coming on their working holiday visa if they're a younger vet
Okay.
and they
Yeah.
want to come and do that work around Australia holiday. We can help with that. But also if there's someone with a family, so a partner and a couple of kids that they want to uproot their life and move all the way over, we can support with a visa for that whole family. And age depending, we can often offer a pathway to permanent residency. If they come here and they fall in love with the country, we can help you to stay really long term.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
obviously so different in so many different parts of the world. I think the exam that you're describing sounds the most similar to what we would probably say is the equivalent of the statutory membership exam to join the Royal College
Very similar.
in the UK. So it's quite an extensive exam. Yeah. So
Mm.
but no, thank you so much for sharing that. And Alessandra, how was it for you when you moved to the Middle East with your degree, and how did the licensing work for you to practice there?
Well, basically, a friend of mine who had already been to all the steps, she told me, look, we do have these at least three major events. So basically, what we have is the written test that it's about everything that you're going to practice here. For example, if you are going to work with large animals, so it's going to be specifically for large animals. If you're going to work with small animals, then the exam is basically only about small animal. There is no mixed breed process into that. This is mainly the written test,
Okay.
and to me, it was it was kind of a challenge because for almost like 10 years I've been working in a almost like a subset of a few disciplines. So I need to restudied everything, but the if you when I recall, I noticed that it's quite very structured parts on the move here. For
Hmm.
example, the written test. We have the written test, the interview, and then the practical evaluation. And for those, as I have been teaching since 2013, 2014, it came quite naturally to me because my mindset was already tuned to it's very much about understanding the clinical reasoning behind your decisions and what the examiner wants you to answer. So
Yeah.
it's not something like if we open the page of a book and this type of syndrome here, then I want you to describe everything. It's not like that. The whole process is if you're about to see a patient with these clinical signs, so how would be your clinical reasoning until you reach the final diagnosis? So basically,
Okay.
that's the core idea of the written exam. And
Okay.
the biggest adjustment itself that I need to make it was um, about the differences in caseloads because in
Yeah.
Brazil, 80% of my patients were dogs, and only probably like 20% or even a little bit less. There were a little bit of other species that I saw in there, but mainly it was dogs. And here in Qatar, it's totally the opposite. I
Yeah.
normally see like 80 to 90% of cats throughout the week and only 10%
Okay.
uh, of dogs. And so I
Oh, that's
needed
really
to,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so I needed to recap everything about internal medicine and internal feline medicine
Okay.
because although I knew very specifically in anesthesia protocols and some imaging differences, but there were some things that were quite unique to cats that I needed to restudy it so that I could, oh yes, that was it. It's been like ages since I last saw that. But the only thing that I would do different is that I would probably start updating myself a little bit earlier. But in the end, it was quite fine.
Yeah. Okay. And just going back to kind of the caseload that you mentioned there, obviously what you predominantly see cats, and you said you're focusing a bit more on internal medicine. So what kind of clinical caseload would you tend to see? Are you dealing more with sort of renal disease and hypothyroidism, or are you sort of what's the more typical case that you see when you're dealing with all these cats in the Middle East?
Well, well, it kind of depends on the season. Right now, we are in the parvo season, so we stayed the
Yeah.
whole year. We stayed the whole year with like one or two cases every 2 to 3 months, and now we have like almost two cases per day until,
Wow. Yeah.
and it's gonna be mainly until what? Until January or February. It's gonna be like that.
Wow.
One of
And you
one of the
typically have a
diseases
season? You say you have like a parvo season.
that, and that's it. This is one of those.
Wow.
So right now it starts in November and it goes until January or February that we have parvo cases almost every day. So whenever we have a stray kitten that comes, oh, because it's not so responsive, if you bet in parvo, you have like 70% chance of winning the bet. And another thing that it's quite common here, FIP, it's very, very common. So we do have a lot of cases probably every 10 to 15 days, we have one or two cases of FIP because we do have a lot of inbred cats that they have the same susceptibility of getting that from the same family. So normally when we have one cat from that litter, normally 3, 4 more will develop, or at that same time, or 1 or 2 years later, they end up presenting especially the wet type.
Yeah. Wow.
Some other infectious diseases, ringworm we see like daily. It's quite part of the caseload here. And respiratory intestinal bowel disease, it's quite common. But basically it's infectious.
Okay.
Some more of endocrinal systems or syndromes. We see it, but it's not as common. I don't
Yeah.
know quite well if it's because it might be some of them underdiagnosed.
Okay.
Sometimes we do ask the clients to look. We need to do this test because just like human beings, when we are over 40s and 50s, the amount of exams that we need to do for any kind of procedure or just for a annual checkup, it's like that. When we are 20s, it's basically cough. Oh, okay, you're healthy. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
But when we are like into our 50s, 60s, so a lot of stuff starts happening.
And stuff to appear.
And then, yes, but many clients, no, I will wait until the clinical signs appear. But we have to offer anyway.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, it really is a whole different one. Obviously, Angie, kind of similar question back to you. I know you kind of alluded to some of the, you got snake bites and things that we just really wouldn't see in the UK. I mean, here in southern Portugal, we would see a lot of kind of more vector-borne diseases, so lots of leishmaniasis and the different tick fevers. Kind of what else would someone expect in Australia? I suppose it again probably depends where in the country you are. If you're rural, if you're in the city, kind of, what would somebody probably expect? Maybe kind of an example of each.
Yeah. So if I think about where I am in southeast Queensland, right now outside we've been storming, it's been humid, it's peak season right now. We've got paralysis tick, and it's awful. So any animal that is not on tick prevention that gets a paralysis tick, critical, essentially. So we've been seeing a lot of those within our emergency centres already. Sometimes they'll need to go on a ventilator. Often they don't make it if the pet parent isn't really vigilant about searching that animal for ticks every day. Having said that, I mean, my 2 Labradoodles, we go to the creek every weekend, but they're on preventative care. So I haven't had any issues with that. And most of our clients are really well educated around preventative. So, things like parvo that Alessandra mentioned, we don't see that very much. I think in the shelters it would be a different thing, but certainly in our clinics it's pretty unusual to see a case like that. But we are seeing a spike in ticks. We are seeing snake bites as well. And typically those are the ones that will go through to our emergency centres as well, because they're going to have the anti-venom, and they're going to be able to provide that support like ventilation if required. If we go another weird Queensland one, we've got cane toads here. So if some dogs become slightly addicted to them, so this is a really strange thing, and if they lick them just a little bit, they can get a bit of a buzz from it. But if they lick them too much or ingest too much of the poison, again, it's really toxic. and becomes an
Yeah.
emergency situation. So that's sort of southeast Queensland. If we head down to Sydney and Victoria, there's a lot less of that. We are finding that, you know, the cane toads are sneaking down a little bit further, the ticks are sneaking
Okay.
down a little bit further as well. But we are also seeing in Australia, I think it's probably worth mentioning, an aging pet population. So we
Okay.
had
Yeah.
the puppy boom during COVID. Everybody got a puppy,
Yeah.
everybody got a kitten, but that's kind of peaked. And now we're seeing that
Yes.
aging population.
Yeah.
So what our clinicians are gearing up for is a lot more, I guess, geriatric care, a lot more of those endocrine things, those things that we start to see in older patients. And we are really big on doing those routine testings, trying to stay ahead of the curve and predict those things. I don't want to say too much, but I think we've got a really exciting diagnostic coming next year for those aging animals as well. But really trying to stay on top of that, educating our clients into how they can best take care of those pets as they age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, it's so
Yep.
interesting, really, when, just you never would have thought of, cane toads. That's just not
No,
something
no,
that, really. Go
and
ahead.
as you said, leishmaniosis. I mean, here in Qatar, it's basically leishmani what? Because it's
Yeah.
something that we don't have it in here. And I was always curious to know, there in Australia, do you have a lot of or Lyme disease in there, or
No, they
that's
still say that there's no Lyme's disease in
mm-hmm.
Australia. There's different
All
people that
right,
would argue otherwise. There's people that think maybe in
okay,
WA there is some ticks that carry it, but the
mm-hmm.
official word is that we don't have Lyme's disease here.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
interesting because when I talk to my friends who live in the United States, I normally mention to them, look, Lyme disease and dermatolleriosis for you is Ehrlichia for us. So we kind of
Yeah.
consider that any dog who steps outside the house, does your dog step outside the house? Yes, it has Ehrlichia, or it has it, or it will have one day.
At
So
some stage. Yeah.
yeah, it's one of the things that it's a great part of especially the dog population. They do present that Ehrlichia and Anaplasma babesia. It's
Yeah.
quite common for us here. Only dogs normally who live in the farms, but the ones that live inside the houses and from the households, normally we do not see that. For those, it's more likely to have chronic kidney issues, to have heart conditions, not those infectious ones. But it was funny when I heard you mentioning leishmaniosis, because
Yeah.
leishmaniosis in Brazil, it's very prevalent in there,
Yeah.
especially in
Same here.
those. Same in Portugal.
Yep, very prevalent. Yep. So
Oh,
our family dogs, my dogs, we're always on lice preventative as well as general,
hmm
worming and all the other parasite control. So when I did my very early nursing days, clinical days here, we would see a lot of lice, and it might just be something really simple. Someone would come in and go, "Oh, my dog's nose is just a little bit dry," or "Oh, they've got a little bit of a
yeah.
something on their pad of their paw," and you go,
Oh
"Ah,
God.
okay."
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's interesting then when I was clinical in London and we'd see some of these things and it would be, "Oh, but we spend our summers in the south of Spain," or somewhere. You go, "Aha, that's where you get that." So
There you go.
yes, and we used to get a lot of, especially in our horses, we would get a lot of babesia and rickettsia here as well. So it's really interesting. And then I never saw any of it when I was in London. I mean, heartworm, I almost
Mhm.
forgot what it was. So it's again very prevalent here.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could go into this for hours. And I can see that
hmm
we've got some questions coming through. So I'm really keen to get to some of these. And I think just the last question probably that I had for you guys, which I know a lot of people would be interested in, is cost of living in both of these fabulous places in the world. Obviously, the UK, we are aware there's kind of a bit of a cost of living crisis. How are you guys finding it in? I mean, in Qatar, how are things there? Kind of how expensive is it? Is it easy to find accommodation? All these sorts of things.
Well, it is it is easy to find, but it is very expensive. This is one of the
Okay.
things that it kind of got me when I arrived here. because definitely is way, but way, probably three more ways higher than in Brazil, especially when it comes to housing. The rent is very expensive. If you want to live in the central area or in a compound, it's way more expensive than I used to. But on the other hand, there are many other things that are quite affordable. Fuel, maybe some of the groceries, they are quite even, yeah. But it kind of compensates because everything you can get almost everything you need nowadays over the internet, and the import taxes, they're not that high, and the city
Yeah.
is quite well prepared for that. But yes, it's quite expensive. And when I arrived in 2021, the next year we had the World Cup. So
Yes, of course.
my rent got higher, almost like 80% in
Wow.
2022.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it was like a boom at that time. And then the next year, the prices started to go back
Calm down.
to the a
Okay.
little bit to the way that they were,
Yeah.
but not as
But
before.
not to
So we
pre. Okay. Interesting.
yes, so it
Yeah.
was like that. Something cost normally four. Because of the World Cup in 2022, it went to 7, 8, and nowadays it went back to 5, 6. So
Okay. So
it's
somewhere.
one of the
Yeah.
things that people needs to consider
That's
when
interesting. I mean,
moving
I
here.
suppose with the Middle East, we do have a little bit of the added benefit of the very low tax. So I think if we're comparing, for example, a UK salary in the UK, and you put the same in the Middle East, I think you end up taking quite a bit more home because of
Hmm.
you simply don't get the tax on it. Angie, I don't know what
Hmm.
you guys, I've just seen a couple of questions coming through here actually. I'm just going to pick one up about an idea of salary for an RVN in Australia. It's a question here from Kira. Most job postings do not seem to have a salary listed, so it's difficult to know what accommodation you can afford, etc. It is one of my biggest bugbears, and we do advocate for all of our practices to put salaries everywhere, because it really helps for questions like this. So yeah, I don't know if you could give us a little bit of insight.
And we know that as
for
well. We've been really trying to get our clinics on board with putting a salary range, but there's a lot of resistance. I would say generally with
Really
our salaries here in
interesting.
Australia, it's pretty comparable to the UK, possibly
Okay.
slightly higher.
Yeah.
But really very similar, from conversations I've had with nurses and vets as well.
Yeah.
It's been, a similar sort of hourly. If I'm thinking about an experienced nurse coming into one of our practices, we are able to offer 482, which is a sponsored visa for a nurse, and the minimum salary requirement for that is an annual salary of $76,515 right now. So
Precise.
we're able to offer that in our GP clinics now for a senior role, whereas historically, that was kind of out of reach for the
Yeah.
GP clinic. So we have done a lot of work recently around
Hmm.
mapping that market and making sure that we're meeting the market in terms
Yeah.
of salaries
So
rather
that's
than being one of
roughly, if
those corporates.
off the
Halve
top of
it,
my head, that's
roughly halve
roughly
it.
around 35. Yeah, 35,
Yeah,
36,000
yeah, yeah.
UK pounds.
So
Okay.
thereabouts, and
Hmm.
similar with vets, from conversations I've been having with people, I think it's pretty similar. Our new grads that are starting in February are starting on a base salary of 80,000 Australian dollars, but then they've got a graduate program on top of that with the retail value would probably be about $20,000 for all of that
Wow. Okay.
education on top of it, but we pay for that. Of course.
Okay.
And then, experienced vets going up towards that sort of 160 would be the higher end for a GP salary. But then if you were an emergency vet, it would be higher again. And similarly,
Yeah.
specialists higher again. So I think it's really quite comparable to what people are paid and expect
Hmm.
to be paid in the UK. In terms of
Okay.
the cost of living as well, pretty similar to the UK. There's pockets where it's really expensive. I was in London last year and I couldn't believe how much a cup of coffee was. Actually, I couldn't believe how much anything was. Certainly here in Brisbane, I find that those day-to-day expenses versus London are lower. If you're
That's
in
interesting.
Sydney, it might be slightly higher. Sydney's probably our most expensive city.
Mhm.
But I think generally, those day-to-day things like a cup of coffee, if I think about how much it cost me and the quality in London, don't get me started. But here in Australia, if I go to the coffee shop, it's probably going to cost me $5 for a coffee.
Okay.
Whereas I was finding when I
Yeah.
converted it over there, it was getting closer to $10 for it.
Yeah.
Australians are coffee snobs, by the way.
Mm.
But housing,
I'm with
yes,
you.
it
I'm
is
with you.
hard. Good. It's harder to
Didn't know
find.
that.
There is a lot of competition for housing at the moment.
Okay.
And we have found that rents have been creeping up a bit with the interest rate rises that we've had over the last couple of years. But I think that's stabilized now. And certainly when we're helping someone come into the country, we can assist with the relocation allowance until you get set up. So that kind of goes towards temporary accommodation and things like that. But there's certainly
Yeah.
things that are probably very similar in pricing, some that are a bit cheaper and others that are slightly more expensive.
Yeah.
And same with schooling as well. If you're coming over and you're
Yeah.
bringing a family, we've got really excellent schools here in Australia. And depending on what state you're in, your kids can go to our Australian state schools or public schools for no charge. If you've got a
Okay.
temporary visa or a
Yeah.
482, but then there's a lot of private school options as well that people can
Yeah.
choose from.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That's a big, big insight. Thank you so much for that. I'm just
Mhm.
going to duck back into some of these questions. I hope we can get through all of them. There's a lot coming through. So I'm just gonna start and we'll go through. Alessandra, this one is from you. This is from Sarah, who says she's a Portuguese vet with 13 years of experience in a small animal clinic. She
Okay.
wanted to be a vet in the Middle East. Does she also need to do an exam? She joined a little bit later, so she may not have heard our conversation, but still needs to do an exam to practice in the Middle East.
Well, what I noticed is that they make a little bit easier if you do have a master's in that area. So if you have any way that you can confirm that you have any specialty or that you have been through a very extensive experience, so that you can demonstrate that. Probably the written test they cannot. Uh, take that into a main thing in the whole process. For example, I had my master's, but my master's is kind of a tricky thing because although it was mainly used for small animal, but part of it was done in a wildlife. So as I'm here to work with the small animals, so my master's didn't work for that. So I had to do the
See,
whole
yeah,
process. Yes, I need to do the whole
okay,
process. But if you already have, for example, master's or PhD in any area, you can go straight for mainly the practical examination and the interview, because these are
okay,
the three steps. It's the written exam, the practical examination, and the interview after all.
okay. And so you may be able to skip past the first step if you have a qualification
If you
relevant,
have a
an additional
qualification that you
qualification relevant to that area. Okay, that's really
that,
interesting. Thank you so much for that. Andrew, we've got a lot of people with lots of questions for you, I'm afraid. Someone has popped here. Is there an age limit to relocate to Australia? I'm 43 and would I be too old?
No, so with the 482 visa is the one that we use most commonly, and it is a temporary visa. So it's a temporary skills visa that we can take out for 4 years at a time, but we can renew it as many times as we
Okay.
want, essentially. There is an age limit to getting permanent residency. So
Okay.
you can get permanent residency quite easily in Australia up until the age of 45. Once you go over the age of 45, it is possible, but you need to be on a salary that meets the high income threshold. So that's about
Okay.
183,000 now.
Okay.
Having said that, we have got an application in with our Australian Immigration Department for what they call a labour agreement. And if this comes through, basically what we've asked the Immigration Department for is an exemption to that need for the high income threshold for people over the age of 45. So we're petitioning the government at the moment and hoping that it will come through. And if it does, it means that we can then offer permanent residency quite easily to people over 45 without needing to meet that high income threshold, because it's, in a lot of our GP practices, we can't quite meet it. In specialty and emergency, we can very easily, but in GP, we can't necessarily. But if people want to come over for a few years, absolutely no age limit.
Yeah, fantastic.
Nice.
Thank you. There was another question similar. Is there an age limit to work as a nurse? I don't know, Alessandra, do you know if there's an age limit in Doha to work as a nurse?
I don't think there is. I'm not very well versed about that, but from what I've been observing in different places, even human medicine and some colleagues who work in different areas in different places, I never saw that. I never noticed this. Well, maybe not.
Great. Okay, so another one here. So I am a referral RVN in the UK. I'm considering a move to Australia with my husband and son. Obviously, we've discussed, says how easy, difficult would it be sponsorship for my family? Obviously, Angie, you said you guys will support with that. And is there anywhere in Australia you would say is the best to work and live for a young family?
That's a trick
The
question.
$1 million question.
I'm biased.
You're biased, yes. But tell us why. Why do
100%,
you
I will
love being
admit
down
that.
there?
So if you're an RVN working in referral, amazing, because that means that, we could look at something within our specialty and emergency network. We've got 23 specialty and emergency sites around the country. And typically what we'll find is there'll be penalty rates associated with working there. So it's relatively easy for us to meet the salary requirement for the visa. So that theoretically isn't a problem. Location, gosh, it depends on what you're interested in. So for me here in Southeast Queensland, I've got 2 boys. They can be outside most of the year because 9 months of the year it's absolutely perfect here. 3 months it's probably a little bit too hot. But Sydney has their amazing beaches, and there's so much to offer. Or the Central Coast just north of Sydney is also beautiful, and slightly more temperate climate. Melbourne, you can have 4 seasons in one day, so it's a bit more like the UK, but again, it offers something different. So it's really hard without knowing someone and knowing what their interests are outside of work for me to say. Otherwise, I just always tell people to move to Queensland.
Just one question. When you mentioned it's quite hot, about the average.
Oh, nothing compared to where you are.
Heat competition.
Okay. Oh, yes.
No, you win on temperature, but we've got the humidity.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Here the temperature is quite high, but when it gets humid, my gosh, it looks like you're walking with a sauna around you all the time.
We've got
It's
excellent
yes.
though.
Well, when it goes more than 50 already, 50 or 60, it's already impossible to go outside. But one of the things that we notice is that, oh, by the way, it's metrical or imperial that you use in there?
With
The
degrees
system
Celsius.
So here, for example, it's way easier for us, like 2, 3 in the morning, to support to stand for 42, 43 Celsius degrees.
At 3 in the morning.
At 3 in the morning, if the humidity is around 30 something, but 35 with the humidity like 65, it's impossible. You just go outside and you start to sweat.
Can't
like
breathe.
crazy.
Yeah. Good air conditioning everywhere, I would imagine.
Everywhere, yes.
Yeah, you cannot survive without the AC.
Mhm.
Angie, sorry, another couple of questions here about moving to Australia. So another very experienced nurse who's recently completed the advanced nursing certificate with the RVC, hoping to move to Australia East Coast next year, with a partner who is a Spanish trained vet who's currently going through the entry exam process, interested in joining Green Cross. I'm wondering what the sponsorship options are. Obviously, we've kind of covered a bit of that. Are you able to offer any form of buying out agreement due to being tied to my current practice for the cost of my certificate? So a lot of practices in the UK would take on the debt, so to speak. Is that something that you guys are also able to offer?
Potentially. So what we have done in some instances is offer, there's a couple of ways that we can package it up, and it's on a case-by-case basis. So I'm saying this, but I can't promise that we can do it for everyone. But we can offer a sign-on bonus to someone to help pay off something like that. Sometimes we can offer, if you can provide receipts for, say, a course that you've done, we can do like an expense claim, which is actually better, because then it's not taxed. If you provide us with the receipts, we can then reimburse the cost of it. Whereas a thing like a sign-on bonus will then attract tax. What we could maybe do is a bigger relocation allowance for the same reason, because a relocation allowance we pay when you present us with receipts, and because of that, it's not taxed. So you get to spend the full amount, whereas any other sort of financial incentive, where we call it a bonus or a lump sum payment, is then subject to tax. So we can work with people to try and package it up in a way that they're going to get more money in the end, versus losing a big chunk of it to tax. And certainly if we're talking about the Spanish vet, if they were, if they've worked in the UK, but they hold a Spanish degree and they've done that part 1 of the AVE, we can absolutely look at supporting them within our network. I would say that New South Wales would be the easiest place for limited registration vets to find work, just because of the different registration requirements. It's frustrating in Australia. We still have a separate vet board for each of the states of Australia, and they each have slightly different rules when it comes to these types of cases. But we find that New South Wales is the one where it's a bit more lenient, and often those vets, if they've got that limited registration, they've done part 1, they've worked in a comparable veterinary healthcare system, then we just need to have another vet in the building as their nominated supervisor. So it's not as though we need someone watching every single thing that they're doing, signing off on their certificate, signing off on their surgeries. And then we can offer potentially some study leave in the lead up to that part 2 exam, once they're here on shore.
Okay, lots of possibilities, lots of ways to work around things. Thank you. And another one here, considering a move to Australia, 20-year qualified vet with a certificate in small animal medicine, currently a clinical director in a corporate practice. What are the availability of senior veterinary roles within Green Cross, and kind of ballpark salaries? Obviously, we know that you guys have got expansive clinics and roles all over Australia. Obviously, we're showcasing some of them on our jobs board at the minute. But just kind of senior veterinary roles in general,
so
and kind of ballpark salaries.
A vet director within our network would be the equivalent. If I think of some locations where we're looking for people that sort of experience would be perfect right now, the Gold Coast, we've got some really great vet director roles. Perth, we've got a couple as well. The beauty of Perth for anyone coming from the UK is there's a direct flight to London from Perth now, so it makes it much easier to visit family over there. It's a long one. I think it's 18 hours, which is brutal, but there's no stopover. So we've got a couple of roles over there right now. If you're 20 years experience, we're going to be potentially, I don't want to make assumptions, but getting close to that 45-year age cutoff for permanent residency. So we'd need to have a conversation around what's the best visa pathway for you and your family. How long do you want to
Mhm.
stay in Australia, and how can we make that goal achievable,
Yeah.
working within, the rules of the Australian Immigration Department. A salary was part of that question as well. I would say ballpark salary, for our senior vets, it's anywhere from sort of 140 up to about 160,000 per annum, particularly if you've got that GP certificate in internal medicine. Our equivalent here in Australia, we do have people that are starting to do those Improve International courses, but we've got what we call memberships in Australia, and it's sort of that halfway point between, just a standard GP vet and a specialist. So you can do memberships in your area of interest, internal medicine, surgery, behaviour, all of those things, and then typically that would attract a higher salary. What we are doing at certain sites now as well, it's a whole nother conversation unto itself, but we are have certain sites where we can offer a profit share arrangement as well.
Okay. Wow. Opportunities are endless.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Angie. Alessandra, a question here for you. A 15-year qualified vet from the UK, and my partner is moving to Doha for a couple of years for a job. How long is the process for? How long would the process be for me to register as a vet? Obviously, we know there are the 3 steps, but how long does that process realistically take?
Well, normally it's quite fast, but it will depend if you get lucky to arrive here. At the same time, these qualification tests are being done because, for example, I remember that during the pandemics, we had one in March and the other one was in November. So you would be like
Okay.
most of the year without working here properly. But nowadays, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it happens like at least 4 times a year. So
Okay.
you have every 3 months you have some opportunity to do that, and it's quite fast. Since you do the first test, the next one normally happens in between 10 to 20 days from
Okay.
the written test until the practical examination. And then
Yeah.
after that, probably less than a week, you have the interview. So it's a quite
Okay, so
fast
it's a really,
process.
a really fast process. Yeah, that's really, thank
Mhm,
you so much. That's really great to know. So I'm very conscious of time, and I think we've got some amazing questions coming through. So we'll just try and get a couple more in.
mhm.
Angie, another one for you. Hi, my name is Holly. I'm a student vet nurse in the UK. Would I be able to come to Australia to get experience? And if so, how would I go about it?
I would probably suggest finishing your qualification in the UK
Mhm.
and then looking at coming over to
Okay.
Australia. Just because then, it's all done and dusted. You can say, I'm a UK qualified vet nurse, and I can see a question in there as well about people doing the diploma versus the bachelor and
Yes,
doing
I
it via
was
an
going to touch on
apprenticeship.
that.
We
Yeah.
recognise all of them, particularly because there
Okay.
isn't that requirement to register in all of the states of Australia. So I think finishing your qualification in the UK and then coming over is a great way to do it. Younger career nurses or vets as well, there's that working holiday visa. So if you want to come over, it's relatively inexpensive. It's about 500 Australian dollars, so probably about £250. And they've changed it recently under, I think we've got a free trade agreement between our 2 countries. So you can apply for that one up until the age of 35, and you can renew it 3 times. So you can have
Okay.
3
Yeah.
years living and working in Australia now without the need to do farm work. You used to have to go and do
Yep.
3 months of farm work. That's specifically for UK passport holders, not the European passport holders. It's a little bit different there. And with that visa, you can work for up to 6 months in the one location. So you can actually work for 3 years for Green Cross within our network. You just need to,
A
at the
different
6-month
side.
mark, change location.
Okay.
And you can move,
Yeah.
between 2 clinics for 3 years
Wow.
to work the
Yeah.
system. But that's the only limit
Yeah.
there. So it's a relatively cheap way to do it. You can also go, you know what, I want to see all of Australia. So you could get that working holiday visa, fly into Sydney, work there for a couple of months, travel the East Coast, stop in Brisbane, do some work here, head up further north, do a bit of work there, go across to WA. So it's a really amazing way to see the country.
Travel and yeah,
Mm.
fantastic. No,
Mhm.
that's incredible. Look,
Kind of went off course then, sorry.
No, absolutely not. These are, I think we've had some incredible questions. So thank you everyone who's put some questions through. I wish we had more time to sit and chat about every single one, but on the email that will follow up tomorrow, that will go out with the recording, we'll put all of our contact details on there as well. So
Yes,
please feel free to connect with Angie and Alessandro. And for anyone who is in London and maybe attending London Vet Show, Angie's going to be coming over and hanging out with us on the Vet Time stand. So please get in touch, book some time to take her for a good coffee.
I'll buy the coffee.
Booking some time.
Would it be useful if I put my email address in the chat here, Emma, or you're going to do a follow-up?
Please. If you could both do that, actually, that would be fantastic. And I think I'll pop mine as well, just in case for anyone. But I'm obviously around on LinkedIn, and you can catch me on my email at any time. And again, we'll be at London Vet Show in a couple of weeks. It's coming around very quickly, actually. And if anyone is heading to Vets Now, I will be there on Thursday as well. But look, just thank you so much, everybody, and obviously please visit the jobs board. We've got roles for green on there, we've got roles for Parkview, as well as roles in Dubai and in Canada. So we're really growing this beautiful network of international roles. So anyone who's looking for something new, please do go and check it out and get in touch. And just thank you so much, Angie and Alessandro, and thank you so much to everyone who gave up their Monday evening or morning, I should say, to be with us.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much.
Next time.
See you guys. Have a great night.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Have a good night. Yeah, have a great day. Okay, all right, bye.